Hello. Welcome to this video. I was just browsing the internet looking for ideas for my fantasy world, and I was reading about the Blood Elves from Warcraft 3, and I got to an idea that really caught my interest, and I decided to make a video about it. So, for those who don't know, this race of the Blood Elves are basically the elves that survived the apocalypse that the Arthas, the bad guy, kinda unleashed on them, and basically they are what is left of the elves, and they are just like trying to found a place to live in. And for that, their military evolved to do some unusual things. As you can see on this uh, picture, this guy, he's called Spellbreaker, which is unique of itself, and he is using a double-sided saber, which I will make a separate video talking about those, because something like this really existed. But what really caught my interest was this glaive thrower. Now, glaive being a very popular polearm type all across the world, like these are the Chinese ones, these are from Europe. We will talk about this one in this video, and I will explain why this one is the most interesting to me in this context. So, if we look at what the glaive thrower is, unfortunately, it isn't some elf throwing the glaives. Is this moving ballista? But let's not get discouraged by this, and let's go some thinking. So, why did I choose from all the shapes of the glaives this one that looks like a kitchen knife on a long stick? Well, it's because I was thinking, how are we going to throw these glaives to be somewhat effective? We know from history that the throwing weapons weren't usually meant to kill your enemy, but inconvenience your enemy. That means that if you use like the Roman darts, the plumbata, or the Frankish throwing axes, or uh, the throwing knives, or whatever, you were usually trying to just inconvenience your enemy with something that would, stick to his arm, or just being a nuisance to him, or in the case of the Roman javelin, it was made in a way where you would throw it at the enemy shield, it would break into an L shape, and then it would just be stuck into the shield of the enemy, and it was very hard to get it out. So the enemy would just throw away his shield and continue fighting without it. Now, those javelins were usually pretty short. So if we look at the picture of right here, we see that this guy, if we put the length of the spear, it would be as long as him. Now in glaives, it usually is the length of you, that's the stick part, and then the blade part continues above your head. That already tells us that the glaives would be heavier than the usual javelin. So how do we deal with that? That is the key of this kitchen knife shape. Why? Well, it's very top heavy. It's made with a point so it can stick. Some glaives don't cut, and this part that goes forward. It allows you to hook the shield of the enemy and thrust into him. Thrown glaive shapes that can look from something that looks as weapon. And we can go across all the cultures: Japan, Europe, Middle East, Americas. We never see that being like a dedicated weapon. So we need to put the glaive into a position of the thrown weapons, and for that we can look at historical polearms that kinda did the similar purpose. Here we can see a Swedish sword spear, which is a cutting and also piercing weapon that has been used by the military officers that usually led other guys using a spear. So this was purely like a status weapon. So we know that something like that existed. We also know that hybrid weapons did exist in history. For example, this Japanese nagamaki, which is half being just a handle and half being just a blade. Like in Lord of the Rings, when you see the elves fighting in the last war, they are using this, but more bronze looking, and also made to look more elvish. But let's say that we will do a glaive that looks like this, because if we compare it to the Swedish, this is basically too long and all the weight would be in the guard. This one, no, it's all in the blade itself. And this shows us that doing it half and half would not really help us, because it would be too short to keep the use of the glaive. Now, if we go here and we see these throwing darts, which is basically the evolution of javelins, they were very popular in Ireland, where the dead, before it was given a sight, was using these darts. And these darts are mainly used as a hunting tool. Why? Well, because when we look at the tip, this shape is made to be used against deer. It sticks in, it hooks into the flesh of the animal so it doesn't fall off. And it kinda cuts it with these wings to make it bleed. It's a wonderful hunting tool. And we can also see that it has these feathers. So it basically looks like a big bolt that you would put in the crossbow, but you throw it. And in this picture we can see how were they managing to throw something as long as this dart, which is bigger than the man himself. Now, I could not find the picture I was looking for, but we will use this one because it has the thing that I was looking for with these darts. And this part which is an evolution of the atlatl. Which is this. It's basically like a stick with a hook that you hook into the javelin, and it kind of works like a longer arm, so you can throw it stronger. And this technology, which is from the Stone Age, evolved into the medieval age, which is what this guy has here. It's not really the best picture, but what it is a bit of a rope you would put into the down section of the throwing dart, and it basically allows you to hook your hand into the rope. Then you would hold the dart, and you would throw it, and basically you push it from your hand and from the behind of the spear or the throwing dart. So my solution to this question of can we have a throwing glaives would be yes, we can, if we made it a bit specialized, and this is the idea that I come up with. Yeah. As you can see, me drawing in Microsoft is the best it can be, and I am gonna draw one more thing to here to make it usable. So if we look at these glaives, like my idea is that you would take a guy and give him 3 glaives. We know that the Roman infantry used to carry around 3 spears, 2 to be thrown and 1 to be used in man-to-man combat. So if we take this guy and give him 3 of these throwing glaives, the idea would be that as the enemy comes forward, he would throw the first one to focus on the tip around here and try to hit the enemy in his shield and get rid of the shield. Because now you have a strong glaive pierce through your shield, and it's heavy, it's cumbersome, you would just throw the shield out. The second glaive he would throw, that could focus on the cutting tip, which is here. And that could be meant to not just inconvenience the enemy, but also to kill the enemy. Either you could throw it and hope that you would pierce the enemy with the point, or if you miss, the blade of the glaive would still cut, and being heavy, it would still could do damage to the enemy. And if you hit him, let's say, around the shoulder, it could either hurt the man or his armor and really do some damage. Now the third glaive, the rope for this one would not really be used, because this one would be used in melee, and this guy having this big shield with, you know, this hole that is perfect for a polearm that could rest into this hole and be used to still pierce the enemy or cut when you pull it out of this hole. So this is my idea. How could we use a thrown glaives in military? But also there is one more idea that sounds cool, but I cannot imagine it being used in a military context. And that is that you would take the glaive, hold it around here, spin with it and throw it like the Olympic ball. Now you would hope that it would go straight, which is possible with some training, and it would focus all its power in the tip, again piercing the enemy, but now being much stronger from the spin and you using both hands. But also if you miss and it goes just spinning around like a throwing star, you could still hurt the enemy because it's a long weapon spinning with the power, and it could still cut into his shield, possibly breaking it or making a dent, or if he gets hurt, let's say in the head, from that spin, from that power, it could still have as much power as if you hit him with the polearm in melee. Now, why I see this is impossible in the military context is because to make a line of men who spin around and then throw the weapon, you would have very small rate of fire, and also the men who just spin around would get dizzy and you would have to take him down before he throws another one. And there is no time to throw the second one because the enemy is already close to you. But that's the ideas of how the throwing glaives could be used, and I think it's a very nice idea that in some context could be used in, like, let's say fantasy setting where elves are real, or when you have some race that is using glaives, and this could be like a way to make the glaives not only a polearm in melee, but also something that you can use at distance. So that would be the video. Thank you and bye bye.